Hello everyone and welcome to the Premiere Pro, where you'll learn everything you need to know to go from a 100% beginner to a professional level video editor. We'll release at least one new tutorial every week, and if there's anything you'd like to see covered in the future, let me know in the comments. In Volume 8, I showed you how to keyframe video with effects controls. If you want to take a look at that video, there's a link in the description. Right now, I'm going to show you how to keyframe graphics with effects controls. And this is kind of our last step that's going to make this video come to life here. And then in the next tutorial, you'll be ready to export. So I have some graphics I've already put here. If you want to know how to get graphics or get things into your timeline, it's in the previous videos on how to import and incorporate graphics. So really this tutorial is really just how do you keyframe these graphics and what do you do once they're in the timeline. So I'm actually going to make this line invisible. I'm just going to refresh you and show you this video again without graphics. This last graphic is from a previous episode where we showed how to create this in the screen here. Okay, so throughout the video, it's just missing a little bit of graphic support, just that last bit to get it there. So we've placed these graphics here in the timeline. So you see, we just have some clean words here with a little bit of a background, and you can already see it just kind of makes everything pop a little bit more. So these are the graphics that we have to deal with here. And what this does is it just really helps to frame the story, because we're basically telling a story here, a visual story, but then these will be something that you would call text callouts, where they kind of frame that story in themes. So really what we're saying here is, as an athlete, if you don't give up, if you're persistent, if you're determined, you'll get there. We're showing people training kind of in darker areas, more alone. And then as you go, it gets a little brighter, right? A little more exciting. And then finally, here we are at an NBA game. So that's what we're saying. We're saying that's the journey. We're telling the story that if you have strength, heart, determination, persistence, and you never give up, that's how you get to the big show. And again, that's what editing is. It's storytelling. So the better story you can tell, the more compelling your video is going to be, and the more your clients are going to like what you do and want to use you more. So obviously this is covering a lot of the screen. And before we start with any graphics, you always want to turn on your graphics safe margins so you can really see that you're in your safe areas. If you don't have that, you can hit the plus over here. You can drag that down and you'll have it. So we probably want to make this part a little bigger because we're really focusing on graphics, because our edit's done, so we don't need to worry about that. So as long as I can see these here, that's really what's important. So we'll kind of shrink that down and we're going to really focus on the video part of this. So the first thing we want to do is size this and frame this to match this shot. Right now it's covering her face. Stylistically, you could do that, but we probably don't want to. We want to do what we call the lower third here, which is this bottom inside line. That's our graphic lower third safe line. So the way we can do this is getting into the keyframing. So we want to select that. We have our effects controls, and now we can move this around, up and down, left to right. It's going to undo to recenter it. What I'd like to do is bring this to the lower third position. But I'd also like to make this a little smaller because it's still overwhelming the shot a little bit. So let's try, we can just hit the slider or you can punch in the number. Let's try 75%. Okay, it's not bad. And lower third. And then maybe we want it to be one side or the other. Or maybe we want to animate it to go to one side or the other. So here's how we can do that. So this is our starting position. And if you remember from previous videos, always put the playhead where you want to start this move, because that's where it's going to record it. So why don't we just do this? Why don't we have it fly in and then it's going to kind of slowly float across the screen. So I'll show you how we'll do that. So if our first position is off because it's flying in, you're going to move it all the way to be off the screen. And what you're really doing is just recording this position. So you hit position. And now it's going to know that's where you want to start it. And then we want to go frame by frame, because for this to fly on quickly, this is not even going to be a second. So let's try about 10 frames. So we'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you can basically use the arrow keys to move this. And then we're going to move it to where we'd like it to land for the first position. That'll be right about there, because that's within our graphics safe on the right. And it automatically creates a keyframe. Now, here's what we have to do. We have to determine, okay, how's it going to end up over here? Well, if we want it to be by the end of the shot, the end of where this graphic goes to, we want to hit the down arrow key once we're inside of the timeline. And we actually hit the wrong timeline there. That's fine. And then hit the down key, and it's going to keep going to every point, and then we're going to get to that last frame. So hit the back key to get to that last frame. And then we're just going to move it to where we'd like it to end up, which will say about here, about the graphic safe. Then now when we play this back, see that? So it actually looks pretty good right there. But if you look, it hits very abruptly, right? So the way we can correct that, that's this keyframe here, that second keyframe. You can just right click it, easy ease in, and then even, so it lands a little nicer now. But we can also hit easy ease out, and this will make it just kind of move out a little smoother. And we can hit the same thing in the end, easy ease in. And it's just going to make this overall a lot smoother. See that? So now it's more floating and it's not too abrupt. And then as you can see, that graphic, if we zoom in, hit plus, ends right as our clip ends. So you get a nice clean cut. The last frame has a graphic. The next frame is clean. Okay, so we have our next couple shots here. So we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have this actually come from the bottom of the screen. So you're going to go to your first frame. Make sure your effects controls are open. You're going to move this down just to be off the screen. Record this position. And let's say we'll go maybe, just make sure this is highlighted and use the arrows, go maybe 10 frames. And then let's move up, not quite all the way, maybe to about here. Go about there. It's going to automatically create that keyframe. So let's look at that. Okay. And if we zoom in here, so we want to see this a little closer. Okay. We'll right click, easy ease in, and that way it's just a little smoother. And what we can do here, sometimes you can make the graphics kind of work thematically with what you've done. So what I'd like to do is have this move off with the puck, and it almost looks like the player hit it. But before I can do that, I need to kind of retell it that I want it to stay there until that point. So what I just need to do is just create another, just literally type the number in again and let it create another keyframe. And if we shrink here, we can see that. So that way it's just going to hold that position till there, because if we add more information later, it's going to see that as the only other keyframe and it'll gradually do it. And that's not what we want. So now that we have that established again, we'll do that as well. Oops. Now what we're going to do is say, that's the point. We want to move that right to there. And then once that moves off screen, we want the graphic to move off screen with it. And let's see what that looks like. See that? So now this kind of works with the action on the screen. And that's like the power of keyframing graphics. And that actually the first time, you may have had to adjust that, but the first time that looks pretty good. So let's take a look at these first two. So now we're having these graphics interact with this video in a very meaningful way. We're not just slapping them on top. It's kind of interacting with the theme. So for determination, maybe we'll just do a scale, because determination is like driving forward no matter what. So maybe thematically we want this to scale up and drive forward in the video, right? So why don't we do this? We're just going to move this down just to be kind of out of the way. Let's go to our last frame because we want it to end up at this size. And this one's going to be really easy. You just hit scale, go to your first frame of the graphic. You can use the up arrow until you get there. And we're just going to, animation a lot of time in Keyframe is working backwards. You start where you want to end up and then you work your way back from there. So let's say this starts at maybe 90%, right? Now this is just going to grow over the course of this, but let's see how quickly it does. All right, so that's pretty cool, but I feel like it's a little slow. You may not notice it. So we will just want to pick a speed that's going to make this not too quickly, but just grow enough that we can perceive it. So let's try 80%. And again, make sure this blue is selected so you don't write a new keyframe. 80. And let's see what happens here. That looks pretty good because what it looks like is the text is determined as it grows. So that's pretty nice. And then for this last one here, let's just do something really simple. Let's just have it kind of what we call fly on. So it's going to start big and land. So we can do here again, we want to figure out the point that we want it to land and work backwards. So let's go 10 frames, 10 to 15 frames, usually a good speed for a move. So we're going to go, we'll go 2 or 3 more. Okay. We're going to highlight it. We're going to record that scale. We're going to go back to the beginning of the frame and we're going to scale this way up. So what it looks like is it's flying in, right? Okay. And then we go to our keyframe, zoom in, make sure that this eases in, and let's see what that looks like. Cool. All right. You know, I could move that in a little slower so we can just drag this to the right till we like the speed. Kind of like that. And the last thing we can do, and showed you how to do this in previous tutorials, let's just give it a little bit of a dissolve. So that's not just for shots. You can do this for graphics too, and it's very effective. So let's get that to about 1 second. Let's see what that looks like. See that? So what I'd like to do, once we get to the baseball player's face, it's kind of covering it, so we don't want that. So what I'd like to do is actually just move this down right when we get there. So I'm going to go a few frames before. Now we haven't done position yet, so we don't have to worry about the previous keyframes. So because it defaults to the standard position, you don't have to do any keyframes before. You can just tell it from this point to mark there. Now you can move forward a few frames. Keep going. Because I want that to kind of maybe, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames in. I already want it lower because if not, it's going to still cover his face too long. So now let's bring up our graphic safe again. Let's get that down to lower third. And of course, as always, let's ease it in. And you know what? Let's ease it out too, because that's going to make it smoother. And let's see what that looks like. See that? So now we're not covering his face. So again, you don't want to just move stuff to be moving stuff. The reason is how it interacts with the story, how it tells your story, how it enhances your story, and how it keeps from blocking your story. You know, if that's blocking his face, that's not good. So let's look at this whole thing now. go. Now we have a more finished, polished looking piece. So these, uses of graphics and keyframing, they can really put that last bit of polish and professionalism on your video. So now it's not that we're just having a bunch of random shots. We're kind of really framing a story. And now we have what looks like a pretty good commercial spot. So that is pretty much it. Now you know how to keyframe graphics with effects controls in Premiere. In Volume 10, I'll show you how to export your video. For more Premiere Pro tutorials, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and make sure to ring the notification bell. And as soon as the next volume is uploaded, you'll find the link in the description.